Yeah, you've been good. You've been good
Yeah,
though. It's been a while, dude.
I've been okay. I've been okay. All good. At least rested now.
Awesome. Are you still doing
Yeah.
school?
No. So I
Okay.
finished my sister program, but I'm thinking
Yeah.
of starting.
Okay. Like,
Yeah. Probably.
huh?
Mhm.
No, I was gonna ask about like the levels that it's at. Like, have you what stage are you at? Like, which stage did you complete, and what's the next phase as far as like where you want to go?
Okay. So in terms of audit, IT audit,
Yeah.
the primary paper that you take is called Certified Information Systems Audit.
Yeah.
So it's a single exam. Um, yeah, like it contains so many parts to it. I think about five components of IT, um, from um, just the basic governance, like IT governance, what should
Yeah.
be in place in an IT team, and then it moves on to project development. What considerations should be in place when you're like developing new um, new software, or if
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like maybe upgrading new software. It goes on and on. Maybe we're talking about things like um, if you're outsourcing services,
Mhm.
especially now that we're in an environment where we can now sort of outsource to the, I mean, like for SaaS platforms,
Yeah.
PAs as well. So if you have like a service provider providing a certain service, so what
Yeah.
measures have you taken in place, and how are you monitoring to ensure that you actually you're making the people that are providing the service accountable, and they're giving you quality that you actually initially wanted in the first place. And it goes on up to like IT security, like security of infrastructure.
Yeah.
How do you classify the data, like what is the most key data to protect, what is the least key data to protect, so that you
Mhm.
don't sort of just so that you focus your resources on what's most key, as opposed to protecting everything and then hence lowering the level of protection, because obviously you can't, like, you blow your budget just
Yeah.
over just security.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sorry. Uh, I'm already excited,
oh,
but
no, that was like,
is
that was just, I was just trying to give like an
yeah, you give
overview.
an overview and like a breakdown, but like from that, I've got a couple of questions. So you talked about
Mhm.
project development. Is that in tandem or in line with like project management as well, as far as like software development is concerned?
Yeah. So it's actually in line with project management.
Yeah.
So the thing is, what sort of the guys that come in to criticize, right?
Of
So it still
course.
covers yeah, what the developers do,
The
or
most the
what.
most hated sect of IT.
Yeah. So it's actually still like program, like your project management and
Mhm.
software development, and then sort of just coming to see what went wrong. Obviously, like maybe you might not follow through everything, but you just need to have a comfort to say, if it's maybe like you're building something, right?
Yeah.
Did you initially have a plan for it, and was this thing approved by the business? Because obviously, if if you begin something and like the top brasses up there are not fully game on that, like, I mean, like, you'd obviously run out of money, because there'll be no one to sponsor like the next cycle of the project, and it'll be all wasted effort. And then
Yeah.
maybe if you also build something without constantly checking with the end users, or maybe you build, you finish, but the end users don't approve to say this is what we want, it could be a whole lot of like wasted effort, because you've built something that is wrong, because obviously there's a thing of building the right product and building
Yeah.
product right. So yes, you built it right, but you haven't built the right product, because that's not what they wanted.
Okay.
So we sort of now coming to check that to say, whatever you built, is it something that one was maybe like in the development stage, did have like full approval, and then from the top people, of course, and then were the people that were supposed to use it happy with it? Were there any issues? that might recur, like from the incidents, how are you dealing with the teething issues, and are we comfortable that those teething issues will never return?
Yeah.
So just giving that guarantee to say this thing is at least going to work for quite some time.
Okay, cool. In as much as like documentation is concerned as well, if you're looking at like the UATs and whatnot, are you guys at the forefront of that as well, like during the initial stages, or is it during the development process is when you guys come in? Or is it like right at the beginning, at the inception of like the documentation, like when user requirements are brought to the board? Are you guys part of that arrangement as well, or is it like later on where you get to like come back and like run through audits, look at the requirements, and be like, oh wait, but you didn't sign off here, or you didn't involve audit the audit sect here? Like how does it
Yeah.
work? Yeah.
Yeah, from my experience, it's always been at the end, but that's
Oh, okay.
because internal, I mean, sorry, external audit, right?
Yeah.
So external IT will be different from how we'd engage the internal IT audit
Yeah.
because, so like the internal auditors, because you look at the budget. So is it really necessary to bring external auditors to come and give you advice on how you're starting, or is it better to have them come and do like the product, like software, like verify that the product is working fine, maybe
Yeah.
3 months after it's been implemented? I think from a budget call, it would be wiser to bring us the external auditors 3 months after a system has been working for a bit, so that we
Okay.
give the final say, as opposed to coming in too early and then the final part gets messed up because it will be pointless. But while you have an internal IT audit team, they're not supposed to sort of direct you on what you're supposed to do, because the
Okay.
thing is, like, if they direct, they can't come back and review what they gave you because it's they themselves that advise, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're only there like on consultative basis, even if it's internal audit. So they would give you frameworks to say, based on what you're building, maybe you could look at these three frameworks and pick out the best. And you should also consider this and that. They're not saying you should do that, but they'll just give you certain like just consultative advice.
Yeah.
So they'll be involved from the beginning, but only at a consultative level to say, so have you done this? Fine. Okay, I can proceed to the next level without they themselves doing what you're supposed to be doing. So
Okay.
they never touch anything. They just advise.
Okay. And are they equally as effective in their own like respective places? Like, is there an advantage to like internal audits as opposed to like external audits, or are they equally as effective in their own respective spaces? They just bring what they bring to the table.
Yes, there's an advantage of having internal audit because depending on like maybe like the project development approach that you've taken, right? There
Yeah.
are others that are so iterative that in the process you would maybe yes, you're building based on feedback that you're getting from the end users, but somehow you forget to put in the controls because you keep on like refining the model
Yeah.
so often that you forget a certain point where you have to bring in. So by controls, I mean like the measures, like the checks, so the system checks.
Yeah.
So they are there now to come and remind you to say, okay, so you built a financial system, right? Is there a point where this system is going to verify that the person who is making this payment won't come and refuse to say, I'm not the one who paid.
Mm.
So there's what mediation
Yeah.
where this, there has to be an acknowledgement to say when someone pays, it has to send to both parties to say you have made this purchase, like encryption, right? So like more like one-way encryption or two-way encryption, where yeah,
Hmm.
like you sort of encrypt in a sense that it will capture the signature of the person who is sending.
Yeah.
And at any other point, they'll never refuse to say, I'm not the one who did this, because they will not say it was sourced from your machine. So if it was hacked, it's your phone that was hacked, and no one in the process tampered with that. So at least internal IT audit will be the ones to sort of give you like advise you to remind you to say, okay, have you put these controls in place? Because you
Okay.
could build it so fast, but it forgets to put in those checks, and then you now get so many customer complaints saying they stolen money from me. But that's because you forgot to put in certain measures, or maybe
Oh,
even link say who should approve
okay.
this purchase.
I had a question as far as new paradigm shifts are concerned. So you mentioned the financial system, right? So just looking
Yeah.
at where we're headed as far as like the fintech space is concerned, it seems like we're diving into the metaverse and working with features like NFTs and cryptocurrency as well. So how do you sort of like write that scope, or what do you know what to look for in as far as like a financial trading system that uses cryptocurrency is concerned, is involved with, for example, like if someone trades crypto, how would you sort of like audit a system that works in that regard?
Well, unluckily, I
I
wish I
know.
could.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wish I could actually maybe like audit one such system, but
yeah,
I've never come across one.
not
I know
yet.
I've seen a few papers, not
Yeah,
yet, but I'm looking forward. I've seen a
yeah,
few papers around that, like within some of like our platforms, like the audit, the platforms. We have, I mean, like we have a group called Isaka that that sort of is a home for most for auditors,
okay,
uh, IT auditors. But I haven't gotten like a read at that and seeing how I mean like what would be the approach.
yeah,
So I can't really say how, um, and that's quite a tricky question. And at
I
what
know,
point?
I know. Okay, we'll get back to it later on in the future when crypto is like in vogue everywhere across the globe,
Yeah.
which it pretty much is. I think a few countries within the southern hemisphere of Africa are still lagging behind, but that's a conversation for another day. Okay, let's see. I was going to ask about software as a service, but in tandem with like open source software, because we have platforms that actually outsource code, and you
Mhm.
can find a way to like reverse engineer open source code in that regard. What's an approach that you take when someone or a software development team decides to like reverse engineer a system uh, and use it for their own use case? Are there any like special stages of protocol that you follow in that regard?
Okay, so maybe I can start from an angle of open source.
Yeah,
So yeah, so maybe like open source software developed from open source code, right? Is
yeah,
okay as long as the code is regularly being updated, right? So at
yeah,
least that way, all the risks. I mean, like you're comfortable to say there'll be no risk. So if there are any vulnerabilities, they've actually been addressed. But if someone reverse engineers that, then it sort of means that any future upgrades won't apply to what you built.
yeah.
So that would be a concern to us unless
Okay.
you're still using the normal version and you keep on upgrading whenever there are like new upgrades.
Yeah,
So not something that you fully recommend unless there's constant updates to that as well.
yeah. And do you check for the license as well? Because I know that all open source source code has like an MIT license or an Apache license attached to it as well.
Yeah,
So is that something that you look for as well?
yeah. So we have scanning tools, and then yeah, like yeah, it's good that you actually mentioned like Apache, right? So you
Yeah,
have scanning tools, and they'll actually check the Apache version, for instance, and then you have sites like so there's CVE, common vulnerabilities, and then there's common yeah. So you find that so you have sites, open source sites actually maintained by MIT,
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. So you have the CVE and CWE, so they have like a pool, a director of common weaknesses and like vulnerabilities. So it works good for the good. I mean, it works for both the good guys and the bad guys because whenever like a service is actually like when it's outdated, maybe like deprecated or like there are no new versions that are coming out, right? Like
yeah,
someone might have already exploited a vulnerability. So all those vulnerabilities are logged there. So if you're running an Apache version that's quite old, maybe months old, and then someone maybe like within the IT audit comes, they do the system scans, and then they find that like the service that you're using is actually an old one.
Yeah.
So there again, it puts you at a risk because the thing is, you find that an attacker always starts from the weakest point, and then they try to elevate their rights to either the most critical system or someone who's got the most critical rights, maybe who would be like the system administrator, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, so I would say I think naturally, if you reverse engineer open source code, it brings that risk to say, how do you then ensure that like you actually maintain like newer versions, like you keep on updating that to prevent any vulnerabilities, because obviously it means you're sort of branching away from the main upgrades, the future upgrades that will come up because you're going your own path. But who knows, maybe future releases might actually cover certain weaknesses that would also apply to your software. So it's not really written in stone to say that would be automatically like an issue. But
Yeah.
if say for instance you have other measures that you put in place to counter that, then it's sort of okay. So yeah, it goes for again professional judgment and how effective are those countermeasures. But naturally, in maybe from a glance, it would obviously be an issue and something of interest to say. So you've reverse engineered. How are you then upgrading? Because obviously, hackers or other people might catch up to that, and they'll know ways of getting around that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because the fact that it's open source code and any programmer or software developer could like contribute to that code, there's
Mhm.
there's a high chance that I could write some kind of like deliberate bug in there that could hack into a system. So my concern was from a risk management point of view, or even cybersecurity, which I know is only like a sect of what you've done. I'm not sure if it's something
Yeah.
that's like a major or minor part of your sect, but in that regard, is it something that you take into account from only like because you mentioned that it's only dependent on like upgrades, but what about actual bugs? Like, is there any specific software or maybe a person who's tasked to sort of like go through each and every single line of code to just ensure that, okay, there are no security inhibiting bugs in here?
Not really. Maybe from internal IT audit,
Okay.
that could be the case. But what would normally look for in such a case would be, so yes, you have like a software team, right?
Yeah.
So within the team, um, one thing that would be of risk is if the developers have actually access to production environment, meaning you develop and you deploy directly.
Yeah.
That's a no-no for us. But obviously, it goes with what your budget is for that company. I mean, if it's a small company, you can't have five people doing the same work. I
Yeah.
mean, like you don't manage afford paying all those people. So, but what we normally look for is if it's a small team, do you have someone who is reviewing? So even if it's someone who is developing and then
Mm.
deploying, there's someone in the middle who comes to review to see, okay, so what was developed here? So maybe like you have um, maybe like another automated tool that checks the code, right?
Yeah.
You have to run it through EAT,
Yeah.
and if it passes, you deploy it, right? So
Yeah.
is there someone who's checking that the code was first run through EAT, there are no issues, and the same person comes to check that the very code that you had tested in UAT is the one that you're pushing to the dev environment. You're
Yeah.
not getting some other code, you're not adding some funny things and then adding and then deploying it. So
Okay.
if there are such pros, you have a reviewer in the middle, or you have if you're a bigger team, you have segregated roles to say this is just the development team. The system admin is the one who deploys, and the system admin, I mean, like the development team doesn't have access to the live environment. That
Yeah.
would also be comfortable with. So we wouldn't even really need to come and check code for code because the system admin is doing that work, or whoever is reviewing the code is checking that, and they're looking at version control. They are able to
Yeah.
confirm
Yeah.
that one that was running UAT is the one that's being deployed, and if that's the one that they are comfortable with.
Okay, cool. Then on the data side of things as well, like
Yeah,
as far as because the software covers that scope as well. There's the data management side of things. There's this whole debate that's been going around that's in connection to the directive that's been passed on to say that data should be managed locally within the Zambian scope. Just looking at where Zambia is concerned, that
yeah,
our the data management should only be done within the parameters of Zambia and not outside. So we shouldn't have like cloud storage that's like outside the Zambian space. I just wanted to get your perspective on that and your opinion. Like where which side are you partial to? Yeah.
okay. So that's an act. That's what the Data Protection Act, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like,
I didn't want to
something.
I didn't want to like specify what exactly it is, which is why I use the term
Yeah,
directive. But yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I'm
So
glad
if
you're
it is
keeping up.
yeah, so if it is a directive, we
Yeah.
have to comply.
Okay.
But obviously, I mean, there obviously is other considerations because I think
I mean, yeah,
from
we
what,
have to comply, but
yeah,
you as an individual and as a professional in this space have your perspective and your way of seeing things as well. So that's the part that I'm interested in. Yeah.
okay, yeah, okay. So, well, in terms of resources, we have the capacity to house all that locally, and
Mm,
then have it locally. Are we not going to create a single point of failure? I mean, like, what guarantee is there that if we build such a place, it's going to be heavily fortified? We even know to say even um, like certain online tools, or I mean like the big tech as they're called, right?
yeah.
So many big tech or even the fan team have actually been maybe like hacked before, right? And
Yeah.
so what guarantee is there to say as a country if you place all resources in one area, if there was any failure, we would still have measures in how we can easily recover.
Mhm.
So if such measures are in place, or if there are steps into moving towards that, I think it would be a good thing. It obviously creates more business for data centers within the country. But then, of course, the thing is like we're now in a global community,
Yeah.
so it's I don't think all the data needs to be housed locally. Maybe certain national sensitive like data sensitive to national security. Yeah, that could be housed locally. But if it's something that would aid um, global e-commerce, I think
Yeah.
it would still be good to, I mean, like let it flow and let that choosing be by the people that are holding that data. And I mean, like, and actually the owners of the data. If someone is comfortable with the data being housed outside the country, and for a certain, and they're aware of the period for which that data will be used and for what purpose the data will be used.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, maybe there could be more exceptions and leniency from that end. Yeah, I think it's something that still maybe like needs a bit more clarity in terms of
Okay.
where the boundary like.
Okay, but just based off the answer you've just given, I would say you're more partial to like a decentralized data management system as opposed to like a centralized one. Am I correct? Or
Decentralized. You
yeah, are
said,
you more
could you
partial
just?
to like a decentralized system, or do you prefer
Yeah,
centralized?
yeah. I think a decentralized one works is safer to some
Yeah.
extent because you can't just attack one place.
Hmm. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Then moving to risk management. If when you approach a firm or a company as an external auditor, is there a grace period that you like give a company or a firm if you find a bunch of things broken or protocol being, zigzaggy? Like, do you let them off with like a warning? Is it like, oh, third strike, you're out kind of arrangement? What's the approach uh, from your from your experience? Yeah,
Okay, so maybe to begin with,
yeah.
um, our employers, or rather the people that would bring us to your organization, are your employers as well. So, I mean, so it's the board, the management, or the
Hmm.
top executive, right? Depending on what size of the company it is.
Yeah.
So, whatever issues we find, we have to report to them, and we'll obviously report to them. So, we'll produce a report, say these are the issues that we found, and then maybe like from the IT side as well, would get comments as to um, maybe yeah, comments as to when you plan on resolving that and who will be responsible for that. Obviously, would have obviously established who was the owner of that control, that yeah process.
Yeah.
Um, so the control owners would then also give a timeline to say by this time this would have been reviewed. I mean, like this would have been fixed, or if it's
Hmm.
something that can be fixed because of resources, which is why I keep mentioning to say, I mean, like the audit is just there for value addition. So
Yeah.
like we have to scare people off. Yeah. So if it's something that can be improved, there's a chance now to actually mention say this we can't implement because we don't have maybe this software, and then our employers, your employers would also see, oh, okay, so the auditors have picked this up. The IT team kept on telling us, we thought it wasn't much of an issue. Now that the auditors have mentioned it, maybe it's time that we bought this and we put this to rest.
Okay.
So you'd obviously have that. I mean, it gives more weight, and then it will be implemented um, at that point. So based on the timelines that whoever is responsible gives, we could maybe come back for that in the next audit cycle, come and look at that. Or if maybe resources are allowed, we could still do some sort of a follow-up on that, and then just see whether all those issues were fixed before the main audit that would begin in the next cycle.
Okay.
Yeah, so it goes with resources.
So, okay, then how often does a company like refresh the assessment um, when it comes to risk management? Like, how often do they call you in? Is it, for example, biweekly, or is that dependent on a few other factors?
So in most cases, so far, so obviously like there would be audits that would be like finance led and others that are just purely IT. But most of the audits that I do are actually finance led. So it would be every time that a new financial year is beginning, to get comfort over the numbers, like the financial numbers, would then look at the systems that are producing those numbers or processing those numbers. So, or even storing the numbers at some point. So that in that case, then it becomes an annual thing and
Yeah.
within a specific timeline. But then if there's
Mhm.
special jobs, like maybe a new system was developed, or maybe like you performed security hardening, and then you just want to verify, to validate, to say, okay, the environment is now secure, or the new system that was implemented is now operating effectively, and you want our word as well, because that we ideally give as auditors just a guarantee to say, okay, from what we've seen, reasonably speaking, this thing seems to be working fine. So if you want our endorsement, for you to then give that comfort to the board or other stakeholders, or maybe like if it's maybe the regulators as well, if
Yeah.
that's the regulatory deliverable as well, then you'd call us even before the year ends, and then we just look at that as an independent unit and review that. But in most cases, it's tied with the financial audit.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Then okay. I had a question as far as like finance was concerned, but I think I'll get back to it later because I know how finance talk goes. Usually stretches out. So I'm just gonna
Yeah.
ask about compliance and regulation. Who do you report to? Like as an IT auditor, who regulates you guys? Because it seems like you are the regulators. So it sounds it's a it's
Well,
overall the overall
the overall authority.
yeah, or analogy of who guards the guardians, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
So remember, I mentioned Isaka, right, earlier
yeah,
on. So yeah, so like the professional certification paper that you initially asked at the beginning. So that's produced by Isaka, who are like whom you will have to affiliate with as IT auditors. So
yeah,
obviously finance auditors would have other bodies of their own as well. So the thing is, if you are not complying as an individual, you'd have maybe like your license or your professional thing certification sort of being revoked if you don't don't follow the audit. I mean the SACA charter, the
yeah,
auditor charter.
yeah,
But then if it's an internal audit, you'd have an internal audit charter as well. So that is internally built. It would have um, a long-term plan and a short-term plan, and then what it would also define what what is the scope of what would be covered by the IT audit that is internally. Yeah, so that could also be reviewed if you wanted to like maybe see if they overstepped that or it's something that they're not being efficient because their work is regulated by that internal audit charter that they would have made, that they would have stipulated. So I would say there are several bodies of such nature that we report to, and it also depends on engagements.
yeah.
So um, if, say, for instance, you're looking at a client that is also US based, or it's under, I mean, like it's a set client, maybe like SEC, and that is covered by the Sambanis Oxley. So you'd find that in that case, you'd have maybe like SEC as well coming to review what we did because it would be something that is called like public. So it's PCAOB,
Mhm.
Public Accounts Oversight Board
Okay.
body. Some yeah. So you have like whatever you do, you have to do. I mean, like you obviously test the controls, meaning the yeah, like the measures, the countermeasures that have been configured in that environment.
Yeah.
So whatever you do has to be something that could be easily followed by someone else. So SEC would also come in and review that. So whatever you're doing, you have to bear in mind to say someone else will come and review. And even internally, what I would do, my supervisor would come and review the work, they mark it off, and then audit firms are also actually audited. So you'd have a certain maybe like team that will still come through and audit a particular audit firm. They'll pick a few clients and then
Mhm.
they'll see, okay, so in this client, this is what you said. You said you're going to do this. At the end of the day, it's all compliance. So you have a charter. So in this case, it could even be an audit plan to say, okay, so in this project, in this audit site, in this audit, you planned to say you're going to do this and the risk levels are this. So you're going to test this much quantity of this and that. But then what we're seeing on site is that you're testing less of that. So just sort of testing against your own word. So if you said you're
Okay.
going like the audit, if it's IT internal audit, like the IT, the audit charter says this, and you're doing something differently, they'll still use what, like, yeah, the charter or whatever you've said to say who are going to be doing this against
Yeah.
what you've done. And it's pretty much what we also do. We look at the policies and we look at what has actually been configured. So we compare what IT has done versus the policy, because the policy would have come from the top, right? The owners of the business to say they've approved this. They obviously had a specialist to help them develop a certain policy, and they looked at certain risks within the overall environment, and they
Okay.
said, okay, passwords should expire in 30 days. And then we see this IT guy has configured 90 days. We'll be like, your employer said 30 days, you're setting 90 days. So
Mm.
you're putting the business at risk. So the
Yeah.
same thing happens to us as well. So it's all, yeah, like that. Like obviously there's always someone on top of even just the auditors.
Okay, but to be on the on the rebels standpoint, uh looking at the policies as well, is there ever a time they're deprecated? Like,
Yeah.
isn't it? I don't want to come off like too harsh or too forward, but okay, aren't policies developed from like the days of old? And just looking at the technology space, which is ironic because it's a dynamic space which is like ever progressing and evolving. Like, are policies renewed or updated as well in that regard, or do you still go by the book and follow policies from like the days of old and say, oh, but back in like 1965, that policy said this about like Moore's law, but now it's, we still have to follow that when we're in a new space. Is there ever?
No, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
So what
yeah,
happens is, yeah. So we look at that as well. So I'm given, I I go to company X. Company X gives me their policies that they've developed, right? So
yeah,
I would look for two things: who signed the policy? Is it management? Because the IT administrator or IT director can't sign, because if someone breaches that policy, who will hold them accountable? If it's not the business, the owners of the business who
yeah,
approved that. If it's just someone lower than the owners who approved, then I mean, like, there's nowhere where it can go, and it can end up being a lawsuit. So we'll look at that. Who signed? Is it the owners of the business that signed? Check, that's fine. When were they developed? When were they last updated? So there's certain key policies like the information security policy. So sometimes it's one, it will cover like how you manage access, and then so many other things. But other times these things are broken down. You'd have maybe like access on its own. Um, then you also have maybe like policies around maybe like backups as well, right? So
mhm,
some of these things uh, are changing now, right? Because obviously back then you'd hear to say a password should be 7 characters long. Now it has to be 8 characters long.
yeah,
So if a policy is older than 8 years, that potentially becomes sorry, at 8 years. So if a policy is older
mhm.
than a year,
I
one
follow.
year,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So oh, I think it's because of the password, eight
yeah,
characters. So
yeah,
it's,
yeah, yeah. I follow, dude. Don't panic.
yeah.
Yeah,
So if the password is like, if a policy is older than a year,
yeah,
keep coming back to that, then it would now become an issue to say, okay, especially if it's one of like the key policies, like the IT security policy. So you'd come and question to say, okay, what's happening here and how are you covering up the new risks that are coming on? So the certain policies that could stay maybe a max of 3 years without being upgraded, but then there are policies that should be revised like almost annually. So you look at that, but for the other maybe like non-risk policies, you can't maybe go beyond 3, because again now start questioning how relevant are they to the current threats.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's still that time limit.
yeah. I'm just waiting for you guys to jump into the AI, crypto,
Mhm.
crypto and quantum computing space. I can't wait to see how complicated that's going to be for you guys to like. do risk management in that regard. So all the best.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, and like whom do we have the audit?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
again,
So yeah,
another question.
yeah, yeah. And even in the quantum computing space, who regulates that, right? Who regulates
Mhm.
AI? Who regulates crypto in Zambia? It's going to be an interesting paradigm shift for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What's the most effective risk management methodology you've witnessed so far as an external auditor, even internally? Like you don't have to mention the company's name, but being invited to audit a certain like firm or company, and you're like, oh, okay, this is really effective, and you actually like got something out of it that was more of like an experiential thing that you applied to your approach on audits going forward.
Yeah, so normally what gives us comfort is getting to see that we are not sort of building things up. I mean, like a company hasn't just built frameworks on their own, like security frameworks on their own to say this is how we're supposed to do our measures at this. But if they are following maybe like an internationally recognized standard, that gives us comfort. So, for instance, maybe in terms of security, we have the ISO 27001.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, um,
Could you
yeah.
expand on that for people that do not know what the heck that is? Because I've seen that on
Oh,
a lot of auditors' profiles. It's like, oh, ISO 27000 and 27001 or whatever. There are like a bunch of figures, and it's like, what in quantum computing's name is that?
okay. So yeah, of course, it's around like information security, right? So it looks
Yeah,
at um, so it's a guideline as to how to set up like your information your IT environment, right? Like the systems holding the data. So in terms of configurations of best practice standards, like so what would be the baseline of certain configurations that you have in place for your systems? So it covers, of course, everything now begins with access and who is getting that access, and going on to like how maybe like upgrades are made and all that.
yeah,
So it covers maybe like so it has layers. So it will first give you certain parts that must be done, and then the second part. So I think 27,000 and 27,001 is like these are the mandatory things that they should expect you to do. And
mhm,
then 27,002, because like it's a package. Two
yeah,
will just give you like I think it will give you like recommendations to say you could do this. If you did this, you'd be in good. You'd sound like you'd be in better shoes. So
yeah,
to just gives the mandatory as well as recommendations to say try implementing this in your environment. So it just gives the mandatory part gives that assurance to say this person this organization I'm going to is looking at risks from a global perspective. They're not looking at only regional risks, but they're also looking at global risks that are currently trending.
mm,
So under this, there has to be an assessor who has to come and assess what you've implemented, and they certify to say, okay, you are good to go, and this flies like this is okay. Your environment is okay. So you'd have that, and then you keep on hearing people talking about now like so it's called like an ISMS, like Information Systems Management System, that has like all these things now like containerized rather, like it's all everything is like put together. So you look at these standards and you also look at the business itself, what's unique to the business. You put them together, you come up
yeah.
with your own package and how you then manage things around this package. So yeah, it's I think that's a That's the simplest way of explaining it. I don't know if that's
Well, I do, but I just hope that any layman that watches this will pick something out of that as well. Okay, and
yeah.
then so common blind spots that you've come across when doing external audits. Uh, are there any that you're like used to seeing at this point? You're like, oh, okay, you guys should know about this by now, you know, or is it ever
Um,
changing?
yeah, there's certain things that seem not to be issues with most people, but they are actually issues. And I think one of them is how timely people are like terminated, like revoked access from the system.
Yeah,
So you leave today, right? And then Saturday, most policies don't give a specific timeline. They'll just say someone needs to be removed uh, um, like timely or immediately or as soon as they leave. But they don't give in terms of days, like how many days. The best practice is like I think 24 hours. So you find people that stay 3 days on the system, they've never been like disabled. They've left, they've never been disabled. There are also people maybe yeah, it can even extend beyond that. And then now the argument is, well, they never logged in. That's one thing. But
yeah,
then there's so many cases. Like if it becomes a norm, right? What if someone is fired because of something grave that they did? They
mm,
could easily come back and do harm on the organization by doing like something wrong because they have access to the infrastructure. You haven't revoked their access on time.
yeah,
So there's that risk, and we sort of don't see it from that end. So it's something that keeps on coming up so often. We see people that were that should have left the organization, but then they didn't disable them on time, or maybe you even get to discover that they haven't even been disabled. And there are also cases maybe where I say, okay, no, but they log in through Active Directory as well. Of
okay,
course, like it's two-factor authentication. So if we disabled Active Directory, then on this particular software, there's no need. But then obviously there are certain cases where what if your friend knew your password, right?
mm,
You've left, but then they continue using your account to do dubious things because yeah, the thing is they have access to the system. They have access at Active Directory level. They can log in, they have their email address, but
yeah,
they're using your account on that software to do malicious things. And it means they sort of bypass that two-factor authentication
yeah,
because
yeah,
one, logged in as them, and then on the second login level, they're using your account. So you'll be like, oh, this person was fired 2 years ago, but they've withdrawn money or they've moved money, and you never get to easily discover these people because you forgot to disable them on that platform. You only disable them on Active Directory alone. So I think termination is one of those key issues that keep on popping up.
okay. Do you ever get to audit virtual machines as well? Like, are you ever in
No,
the virtual environment space?
no,
Okay.
no, no.
All right. Something for you to think about as well.
Oh, you can tip me. Like what?
So,
What happens there? Like, is it
no, for
maybe like
example,
it's
yeah, no, sir, no, what were you about to say? Let me just complete your
I
question.
thought maybe like it's something that's quite common or people use the same
I don't
accounts
know
or
if it's
something.
common, but it's like it might be a loophole because
Yeah.
if I'm only accessing the system using the Active uh, Directory, then you probably know because that's like it's a one-dimensional way of like of approaching you accessing a gateway or whatever. But if I did it through a virtual machine, then how would you know, right? Because I'm doing it from a virtual space. If I installed like a VM sort of like emulator on my system, which is maybe Linux based, and then you're of the idea that my system only runs on a Windows computer, but then I'm inside the Linux terminal, but accessing that back door to get into a Windows system. Like that you've never, anyway, I feel like that's more of a security thing, but I'm just wondering if that's something that you've ever like looked into as well.
No, but it sounds interesting. I think it's something that's worth exploring and seeing.
Yeah, when you have
Because
time,
now,
just look into virtual machines and yeah, I'm sure you'd find a few loopholes and like vulnerabilities in that space as well. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Let's see. I'm running out of questions here regarding
I think
uh
maybe why you're thinking.
sorry.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's a
maybe like
conversation anyway. I'm not interviewing you, man. What? Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe like obviously maybe people might be wondering what Active Directory is.
Oh
So
yeah.
maybe you need to explain that. I think we use it quite a lot, so it'd be like people will be like, "Oh, what's Active Directory?"
A simple way of like explaining it is I'll lay it off in the simplest way I can. I'll just say it's the primary route or path that you use to access software on your system, on your local system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's simple.
Yeah, as
I
I
was
try
going
to be
to,
as simple as I can be because I don't want to come off too much jargon and bore people and be like, "Whoa, what did you just say?" But yeah, if you feel like you've got a
oh,
better
okay.
answer than mine, then sure, man, shoot. Yeah.
I was going to say maybe like it's the access that you get when your email address is set up.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't that, I think that would be the easiest thing for someone to understand. Of course, given that assuming that the infrastructure is like Windows based.
yeah.
So yeah, so
But
the access
that access is still
get
primary. Like it's still the yeah. I guess we're saying the same thing. It's primary access to a certain environment in your system. Yeah. So rights in that regard, who's got access? There's like a hierarchy that's followed and protocol in that regard. Yeah. Okay, we'll jump into
yeah.
more interesting questions then. If you were to audit Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, how would you start? What approach would you take? Like he calls you in and be like, okay, we've built Meta here, and we need you guys to audit the system. What's an approach that you would take, man? That's going to be a weird
Uh,
space because look, you're gonna be auditing that space as an avatar. It's taken both forms of like VR and AR, which is weird. It's like mixing both augmented reality and virtual reality into like one space. So that's I think well bypassing a lot of risk management policies that you guys have like set out. I'm sure you guys will have to restructure your entire
I
system.
know,
Yeah.
I know,
Anyway,
right?
let me yeah.
Yeah, because I think the only thing I've seen that could work, well, I don't know for starters, like getting comfort over the environment, but then what I'd be seeing in such a case would be maybe having walkthroughs. I mean, like that would make walkthroughs easier because part of like what to do would be like a show me how kind of test
Yeah.
where either look at the whole report of what the system did and then you sort of like recompute that. But in certain cases, you just sit and watch someone do that, and you sort of based on how they're doing it and certain measures that you're seeing, like certain controls that you're seeing them performing, you get comfort over that. But I think in such a case, that would be easier because maybe you just sit and watch and think of different um, sort of like think of things that could go wrong and try to replay those scenarios and seeing how like the whole system would respond to that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think that would be
What's one
honest.
of yeah, so I'm you thinking about it like right now on the spot. What is there anything interesting that you've like that just comes into mind? Or maybe you haven't looked into it that much because of time and whatnot.
Okay.
If you
Well,
haven't looked into it that much, then we could draw back to like what we are using currently, because currently it's only social media platforms. So how would you ensure risk management protocols are being followed on like WhatsApp, for example, if you were brought in as
uh,
an external auditor by a company that built that system or that platform rather?
as people that built WhatsApp,
Yeah. Like if
so
they if
like
they if they called you in and were like, okay, like we need this platform audited, what are some of the things that you would like take into consideration or put into consideration rather?
okay, I think one thing that I would be interested in seeing is whether, um, like everyone who's like using WhatsApp, right? Like, I don't know if I can call it subscribed. Okay, someone who's installed WhatsApp and is actually like active on it, or
Yeah,
they've at least used at least once, accepted the the terms and conditions.
the T's and C's.
So
Yeah,
yeah, the tenancies. So I'd have to, I mean, I would obviously check that to just confirm. And whenever there are upgrades, how, I mean, like, did people still approve that just in case there's someone who, like, who was never given a chance to look at the TNCs and
yeah.
they just went ahead and started using, right? Maybe like if someone pressed cancel and they sort of somehow managed to use, because obviously in that case, that's one case. I mean, that's
Does
one sensitive
does
part.
does, does
Then,
anyone ever read those though?
no. But I feel like it'd be unfair for us to sort of pin it down on, like maybe like Facebook um, to say well, like people didn't read this, because I mean, like, yeah, I think it's quite legal, sadly. It would be easier if all that was actually put in simpler words, right? Because when if you read all that, like, you'd barely understand what's written in there because it's quite technical.
Yeah,
But then again, because it's technical, it makes it applicable for a longer term, right? Because I mean, like, in the event of anything that happened, they can't describe every single case or scenario to say, if this happens, we'll do this, or if that happens, we'll do this. But if they put a certain clause that sort of covers multiple possibilities, I think it's sort of fine. So we can't really pin them down there. But as long as someone got a chance to view or to know to say there's their T's and C's, and if they wanted to explore that further before enrolling onto a platform, I think that's one place to start from. And then the other part would be consistency in how much of the data they are collecting, and then, yeah, like, and how long they're storing that data. Because I would want to look at their data minimization, like how much of it are they collecting about us, and is it reasonable for the service that they're providing? Why get data about maybe someone's age and you never get to use it anywhere? So why not
mm,
drop that field, never ask for that data, and only collect data about when this phone was last on, so that you can at least now know when to send notifications or something like that. So
yeah.
are they applying correct data minimization, and how long are they storing this data for? And I would also want to look at the case where someone uninstalls WhatsApp. There's that right to opt out of a platform or something, right?
Yeah.
You have the right, at least by GDPR and most data protection rules, regulations rather. I mean, standards to
Mm.
say you have the right to delete your data. I think it's got like right to forget, to be forgotten. So I mean, like, so if someone uninstalled the app, did they still continue keeping their data? Why and for how
Yeah.
long?
Yeah.
So I think I would want to see that, because I think it would be a breach if they keep my data. I've uninstalled for maybe 1 year, maybe 2 months. You'd be like, no, wanted to wait and see maybe the person was going to come back, so you had to keep it for a while. But then a whole year, you'd be like, okay, I think this is intrusion. like intruding on someone's.
Okay, but that's only from like a management side, because if I've built the software and I'm still maintaining and managing it, then that's when you would approach me with queries in that space. But like for example, I'll compare two platforms that are in that space. So there's WhatsApp that's got the monitoring done from like, like it's done from a global scale, right? Like outside the scope
Yeah.
of the system directory. But then you've got an application, a chat application like Signal. I'm sure. Have you heard of Signal? Yeah, everyone should jump on Signal. Like, jump
No.
on Signal. Yeah. So there's another there's a chat platform that's called Signal, and what this one does is it has all your data centralized. It's encrypted and centralized only on your system. Like no one is monitoring that data, no one is monitoring your conversations. It's only you who's got full control over what you decide to share on that platform. There are no stories, no status updates, no 24-hour disappearing status update like the thing that WhatsApp introduced. So it's just solely for conversation, and whatever conversation you have, whatever trade secrets you have are encrypted and saved onto your local system directory, as opposed to WhatsApp, which has you uploading your conversations to the cloud. You don't even know who's like monitoring or is in control of that quote unquote backup. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think a question I would ask is, how would you monitor or rather approach auditing a system or a platform like Signal, which has everything centralized to your local? Yeah.
I think, well, I think maybe like I'll look at the level of encryption
Mm.
to begin with.
Yeah.
So what encryption levels are they using? Is it one that could be easily like cracked? I think that's where I'd start from. Of course, even with that as well, like I think I mean, they're obviously. This, I mean, I think the current one. So we have SH two, not two, three. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I think the two. I can't remember which two. Yeah, but like the two. Um,
Sorry,
I think that the
you
two.
said SSAH or
Yeah,
SH?
yeah, like SHA,
Oh,
SHA.
SHA. Yeah, yeah. Because I was trying to figure out which
Yeah.
one you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a second version. I think there's a third version, and then there's now I think MD5. I can't remember what's the highest level for MD5 as well. But like one is slow in encrypting, but keeps securely. The other one is sort of maybe it encrypts faster, but it's slow in decrypting. So I think I mean like obviously, there will be debates there in which of the two approaches they take. If they go the SHA route or the MD5 route, and then they see. I mean, like, but I think ideally I would look at the level of who can decrypt that data, and then the
Yeah.
other concern that would come in is obviously that is only as secure as someone's phone screen password, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously it doesn't serve a purpose if the data is encrypted, but someone can easily unlock your phone. So what's the measure there? Of course, I mean like they can't. It's a
The,
third party
the,
app, so they can't
the,
control that.
yeah, and they have a way of encrypting the backup. So like WhatsApp, for example, will just save your backup and like upload it to the cloud or wherever it's set to. But with a platform like Signal, it like encrypts the backup as well. So if you're talking about protocol security measures that are taken in that regard, then I feel like that's a more intense approach as well. Because I remember trying to back up my my Signal uh, chat history just for the sake of like R&D and like record keeping and whatnot, and it sent me a prompt that had some kind of like a some kind of a hash key attached to it, and I was totally ignorant. I forgot to like write down that hash key somewhere. They actually advise that you don't save it on your device or anywhere else. Like save it somewhere you wouldn't even like think to like look for it ever again, which I don't think I did. And when I tried to like recover my backup, it requested for that it requested for that key like after like a month or two, and I totally couldn't remember. So yeah, so just looking at extreme, not extreme, but like really standardized approaches of like software encryption and protocol. I feel like Signal's where it's at, dude. Signal's where it's at.
I think well,
Yeah,
but I think well, even WhatsApp. I mean, like there are those local backups on WhatsApp, right? But I feel like even if the backup is encrypted,
yeah,
that secure is only as secure as who can access your phone. So yes, I
okay,
mean like that doesn't have to leave your phone.
yeah,
So
yeah,
obviously the encryption part is a case where someone gets the data away, right? But then what if your phone password is weak? So is there any
yeah,
control that couples the two? So the encryption plus who's got the front. It's more like you say you can't access this house from the sides, but
yeah.
then the front door is always open.
Yeah, and and
So
and and it's a catch 22 as well, because like I mentioned, yeah, quite all right. The intense encryption is done on your local device, but then you decide to back it up on like a Google Cloud somewhere, and then you have like a really proficient like hacker that manages to hack into your Google Cloud and finds the the encrypted backup and cracks it. It still goes back to square one. So it's a
yeah,
it's
yeah,
an
true,
Ouroboros case. Yeah, yeah,
true.
yeah. Really interesting, man. Dude, I think we've exceeded an hour, right? Have we?
Yeah, I think we've gone
Yeah,
past an hour because we stopped
yeah,
at 30, 2033. That was like 1833, and
yeah,
then now 1933.
yeah. I've got a truckload of like work that I have to finish finish up. So I think I'll get to that, and maybe I'll be up at like 4.
Yeah,
It's daunting even thinking about it. What time are you up, man? Are you still uh a nocturnal
like
soldier?
um, I think sometimes I alternate. The times when I
Yeah.
sleep early, and then I'll be up by 1, so that I work through the night till morning,
Oh,
or certain cases where I push through the night and then sleep late and wake up. I mean, like, whichever route I take, what I've just discovered is I always wake up at the same time.
what time are you up? Like officially for work?
So I get to the office at 9, so I'll
Oh,
be up
nice.
by 7:30.
Okay, lucky you. So it's not
Yeah,
literally 9 to 5.
yeah, yeah.
Not
Nine to
just
six.
9 to 6. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Cool. All right. Great, man. But wait, whoa,
yeah,
whoa, whoa, wait, dude. Like you said one, if you sleep early, if you went to bed at like 7, you'd wake up at 1 and stay awake throughout.
yeah. Because I think somehow, like after sleeping for 6 hours, by the time I'll be going to my seventh hour, like I run
Oh,
out
okay,
of
okay. I see how that works
sleep.
for you. And that hasn't like it doesn't disorient you in any way. Like you haven't been your equilibrium hasn't been messed up. Oh, okay, nice. I'll tr-
As I've slept my normal hours, the
Yeah,
usual hours, I'm always good to go.
awesome, awesome. I'll try that one of these
Yeah.
days. I think I used to do that back in uni, but that was only during like the the
The
exam
exam
periods.
period.
Yeah, the exam periods. I'd like go to bed at like 6 or 7 p.m. and
Mhm.
wake up at like midnight or 1 a.m. and just stay awake throughout. Yeah.
I
And I
feel like
remember,
it's
yeah.
actually been productive.
Sorry? It's more productive, huh? Yeah.
I feel like yeah,
Yeah.
because it's more practical. Because
Yeah.
I'll do it be up for longer hours now, but then I'll do less break because I think the mind would be spacing out around this time. But then if I
Yeah.
first sleep, there are less distractions
Yeah.
after like when everyone else is asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been trying to get back to that as well. My common reg my common regiment was waking up at like 3 or 4 a.m. and then just working throughout. Yeah, then get back home and go to bed at like 8. Because I've been trying to figure out this whole like work balance kind of thing. Like, because if it's always work, 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 dude, like I always thought that burning out was a myth. Like it's true, man. I've experienced it firsthand, and it's not fun, man. Have you gotten into that state yet of like burning out totally?
I think the ones burnt out
Yeah.
went for therapy.
Whoa,
I think after therapy,
that'll be a topic for another day. And on
you
that
know,
note, dude, it's been awesome. It's been awesome catching up,
yeah,
man. Yeah, we'll have another one as soon as possible. Yeah,
yeah,
probably
yeah,
probably probably one of your colleagues this time because I want to have more insight um, as far as like the space that you worked in is concerned. So yeah, that's super interesting for me. It's almost like R&D, and I'm learning a lot, like a truckload. So it's great,
yeah.
man. Yeah,
Sure, sure. I'll let them know then the
yeah.
person that you talked about, and then yeah, I'm sure you can still connect, and yeah, we can find a time that works for them.
Sounds awesome, man. Sounds good, dude. You have a good one. I don't know if you're going to bed right after and waking up at 1,
Um,
or you're gonna get right to it, get right to like working and going to bed at
I think
midnight.
I think I'll stay awake for the next 20 more minutes and then sleep.
Okay.
Yeah, then wake up later.
All right, dude. You have an awesome one, man. Cheers.
All right, thanks. Likewise.
All
Have a
right.
good week as well.
Thanks, man. Peace
All
out.
right, bye.
Bye.
All right.